Thank you, Acting President. I just wanted to add to my colleague, the Honourable Tim Clifford's comments. My area is in the southwest, and it's very important what happens there, and I wholly support the idea of the Ferguson report coming forward and saying we need a rural fire division, a rural fire service. And had this motion come up prior to the government putting forward their issue, there would have been a very different discussion from us. But as the government has come forward with this rural fire division, which once I went into further question with it, I think it really should be called a bushfire division, because it's not just about fighting rural fires, it's about fighting fires in the bush. So it's a misnomer again. Not only is it not a service, but it's it's just an arm of the DFES to deal with some of the administrative things. And I'm not comfortable with the final as it's been presented. I think there's a lot of work to be done there. I'm hoping, and I think I'm confident, that this is not the final, and this is how it will be forever, that we will be able to work with it to make it more suitable for those bushfire brigades that I believe are such a positive, strong force in the rural areas. Given I was in Albany and my home was in danger from the fires in the recent 2 weeks, and I actually spent the night somewhere else rather than to wait and see if the fire came during the middle of the night, I can't express my gratitude to those bushfire brigade volunteers any stronger than to say it here publicly in Parliament. I think what this bushfire division needs to do, needs to look at, where it needs work, is that it has the potential, the capacity, possibly, to work as some sort of a facilitator, to get the collaboration going between DFES and those bushfire brigades. And this is something that other states have tried to do by creating two separate organizations. But having two separate organizations without someone to pull them together and make them work as one is counterproductive. So what we need to do is actually get this bushfire division to have a role, and I know they've got their advisory body. There is the potential there. That what we need to do is get DFES to work with the brigades to strengthen the two of them. Because as I see it, the brigades are looking for a couple of things. One, they want proper resourcing of their personal protection equipment, of their firefighting equipment, the trucks and that they use. They also need proper training, and I understand that the bushfire division is going to be involved in training, and that's a good thing. These things are, I've spent only a few days with the bushfire brigade over the past year, and they're things that I've learned very easily that these are things that matter to them. So it's not an enormous task for this division to go out there and work with the Australian Volunteers bushfire brigades to find out what their needs are. But I think the strongest one isn't a physical need, isn't that need for the resourcing, the equipment in that. It's that psychological thing, that space where you've got bushfire brigades working on, 95% of the bushfires are put out by the brigades without DFES's input at all. They know what they're doing, they know the area they're working on, they know where the water sources are, which roads you can get through, when the last time a burn has gone through. They've got that information to hand. And when a DFES comes and says, oh no, we've got this under control, it's our thing, you can step out of the way, don't cross that line, do what you're told, it's not just demeaning, but it doesn't make best use of the resources. And what our resources are there is that on-ground knowledge that these volunteers have. But I have to recognize that I don't know, I'm not a firefighter, I don't go there and I'm not on the ground with it, and I'm not certain how you would work out which volunteer you respond to. Maybe it would be the captain of the brigade. If they're not there, then what? These aren't answers for me or for all of us to decide. But this bushfire division that's being created, if we actually want to address the fires, that is one of the roles, that is one of the aspects of it. Because one thing I do know is that we need to keep volunteers in the system. And if we look at the average age of volunteers, just like many other things, it is steadily increasing. And we need to get those new, younger members in there who have an interest in protecting their community, their environment, the welfare of their citizens by being involved in this process. So what I see is that this bushfire division should be out there working as a facilitator, working towards collaboration between all those sources or resources that we have. You know, the paid staff, the volunteers, the equipment we've got, to put it together and to actually give some recognition, appreciation, acknowledgement, you know, whatever the word is, to those bushfire brigades, to the Australian Volunteers Bushfire Brigades. AVBFB, that's it. Because that recognition will go a lot further than just trying a top-down approach. And, you know, no matter how hard you go in there and you try and do the right thing, if you do it by stomping all over the people that are on the ground, they're going to have trouble coming back the next time. And we need them. We need those volunteers. We can't do it without them. They're the ones the reason that they can put out 95% of the fires in the bush is because they're there, they're on the ground, they respond immediately, and they're not being paid. They're just doing it because they know that's the right thing to do, and we need to support that. So this bushfire division should be about facilitating the bushfire brigades so that they have the resources they need so that they keep joining up and they keep coming out to fight those fires. Now, I'm willing to sit and watch this develop. And I know it's not an easy task, but you know, we've heard the words collaboration from the government from time to time. And I think that's what we really need to be looking at, because there is no point going into this as an us and them thing. The output, the aim that we're all looking for is the efficient, effective methods to put out those fires as soon as possible. And I'll just take a few minutes, too, to comment on the money that's being put aside for prescribed burns. Now, as most of you probably already know, 2 of the major fires in the Albany region were from prescribed burns that got out of hand. Now, that's happened on many occasions. It's something we seem to just keep dealing with. It would be nice to say that that shouldn't happen. And I don't have the answers there, but I'm sure we will be addressing prescribed burns over the course of the next year and how we manage it, because I think we need a really considerable, sizable rethink about what we're doing. Because if we go in and just trying to burn off more this year, that's great for this year, next, and the year after that, a couple of years. But each time you go in and you burn off, if you can't go back to it to manage it, the fuel load actually increases. So if we're looking at how much of an area we should be addressing through prescribed burns, we should actually be looking at, do we have the capacity to go back in there in the next 3 to 7 years, depending on the forest type and other factors? Or do we find other methods to reduce the fuel load in certain areas? And that is where this Center of Excellence comes into it. You know, there's a lot of research going on across the country, probably in other countries as well, but WA is a bit different. We have a little bit different environment and landscape to many other places. And this Center of Excellence has that opportunity, if funded properly. Now, as we heard, 3.6 million for 32 people or something. You're going to be struggling to do a whole lot of work unless those people are the right ones who can do the research themselves, because there's not a lot of fat in that budget for consultants. And I'd like to see that those people are actually on the ground talking to a lot of the volunteers and other people out in the regions and the local governments to see what their views are. Are there areas where we must do prescribed burns that are safe to be able to do that? Are there areas where we can do mechanical fuel load reduction? Are there areas where we can look at something that encourages decomposition of the leaf matter? Because from what I understand, it's that fuel load is that stuff right on the ground. We're not talking about the middle story or upper story. It's that leaf litter and those twigs and all that sitting on the ground. And if we can get that to decompose more quickly, there isn't such a fuel load building up for the next wildfire that comes through. So let's say I've got hope. I think that we've made a start to try to create a division, a body that might be able to address some of our issues, but it's going to take collaboration. It's going to take a lot of willingness across all parties to work with each other and to learn and to look to the future rather than necessarily to the past. One side comment on that before I go in, I did go to a Noongar burning workshop down in Bridgetown a month or so ago. And it is interesting to see, if anybody's interested in this, to have a look at David Ward, I think is the name. Forgive me, I'll correct that if I get it wrong. Who did a research project on, well, considerable research on the grass trees, stripping back the side of them, and you can actually date grass trees, like you can date rings in a tree. And if you go back, he's got some examples going back about 500 years, showing that before World War I, pretty much burns in certain areas of our Jarrah Forest, burns had occurred every 3 to 4 years. It's variable from that. You'll have to look at the whole report if you're interested. But regular burns in certain areas are the way to go. In other areas, possibly not. In other areas, it might be every 7 years. I'm not going to make that decision. That's up to the research of this Center of Excellence, I would hope, to work out how we manage fires across the region so that we don't have the episodes that we just had down in Albany, or the ones in Yarloop and Margaret River and Northcliffe, or all the places that have gone in the past few years. So here's to hope, and I do believe that some good decisions can be made, and I feel it's up to us to support that.